Cool. Good evening, everybody, and welcome again. So last month I was with Chet that shared with us his journey around his career. And he moved us. Chet was very vocal about and audacious actually about the things that he want to achieve. It's well structured. And he shared with us the journey that he actually took to where he is. It was an awesome one. I did share the recording. It is there on our YouTube channel, but I'll also share the link again. I think I must also give you guys my number in case you don't have it. And I can just share the link with you. It is also on our Instagram page, also on the LinkedIn page or the LinkedIn post that I shared it. So it is it is really there. The recording is out there, but if you didn't get even the public speaking one, it's actually there. So I will definitely share with everyone. Tonight, again, we are telling another story. If there's anything we want to do and want to get right in this year, is to make sure that we share stories that remind us that careers are not linear. Gone are the days where you thought you start here, you're going to end there, right? There's a lot of curves that careers normally take. And tonight I'm actually with Shep, who is going to take us through. Okay, it's Shep at his name, but you can call him Shep. And he will tell us what he wants to be called as he goes on. But today we are taking, and I think I was pleasantly surprised how people appreciated that we set up a session that talks about businesses. I realized we have been on young professionals or professionals in a certain concept, leadership or whatever, but we haven't really talked to business people that have started and that are trying to figure it out and that are trying to build businesses. And I think we started well from someone that started a business from scratch, someone that left work, left the salary to go and start a business they believed in. And I want to hear all about it. I don't know if it's craziness, if it's audacious faith, if it's I don't know what drives people to make such decisions, but I think I am really excited to welcome the CEO of Bantima. Cybersecurity as well. You know, sometimes businesses are this normal known businesses, right? But someone going into the tech space, not just the tech space, the cybersecurity as well, and try to convince us that we can get hacked or we can be victims one day of cyber crimes. So I think I really want to hear about all about it tonight. So let me welcome you, Shep, and maybe just introduce yourself to the people of the Rising Girl Child or the community of the Rising Girl Child that we built over the years.
Yeah, thank you, Lizzie, and also welcome to your viewers and listeners, and thank you for having me on the platform. Yes, my name is Full Shepherd. Some people call me Shep. A lot of people have, over the years, shortened it just to Shep. And then there's some, for obvious reasons, they call me Melusi. There's no rocket science there. Yeah, as far as careers go, perhaps this what we do because our parents took us to school. Now we start businesses. We call them Bantima Cybersecurity and so forth. Because I was really just trying to think through to say, if I'm asked what made you start a business, the question really is what, because and where do you really say you began? And being on a platform like this, I think it's only fair to give credit where credit really belongs. I think a lot of the ideas that one day maybe I'll have a business, they come from my mother. My father wasn't really like an entrepreneurial person. He was more like a career structured person. So my mother is one who was always dabbling in all sorts of these things. So I think hats off to her for imparting part of that enterprising gene, if you like. We can have another series, Liz, where I can talk about what it is that my mother had me do. It's not going to be enough to cover in the time we've got today.
This is a very dangerous community. You don't promise a series or coming back, because they will demand you come back. So
Yeah,
be
let's see how today goes. And then let's if perhaps this is the best part, and from here it could all be downhill, and they won't want me to come back. But let's see how today goes. But anyway, yeah, cybersecurity, starting a business, entrepreneurship. There's so many words there to fill in. But yeah, I'll try as much as possible to also demystify, because I'll be the first one to raise my hand and say, yes, I've started the business, but every day I lie awake thinking, was this a good idea? Why didn't I just stay at IBM or whatever other corporates that I work for, or the ones that invited me to work for them, even after I left my good job at IBM, because I did get further brands that wanted to give me associate partner, cybersecurity, this and so forth and so forth. So I refused those good jobs, and some I actually never disclosed at home that guess what, I was offered this job and I refused it. I'll tell it as a story another time when everything works out. But for now, yes. So it's both crazy. Sometimes it's yeah, you also doubt yourself. So the question really to say, what does it take to start a business? And I think every one of us who is on this call, I suppose, is interested in these answers. And by merely being interested in the answer to that question, it means you've got the curiosity in you. So I wouldn't say I've got it all figured out, because it's stuff that we grapple with every day. I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs myself, and know even those who are building multi-billion rand or dollar businesses, they still suffer from the same uncertainty to say, how will it all look when it's all done? Or will everything go up in a big puff of smoke, or what? So I think it really requires that curiosity, sometimes that conviction in yourself, but you've also got to be able to believe in others, because you're never going to be able to do it on your own. So if you are the kind of person that can also trust and trust others, I learned that sequence of words at the first leadership development program that I attended to when I was still in corporate. So they said a leader trusts and entrusts. So meaning you've got to be able to trust other people and entrust them with work or with responsibilities other than yourself. And I think the very first thing that you've got to be yourself is a follower as well. So because you've got to be able to, the first person you must be able to lead is yourself. You must lead yourself out of that job list that you're talking about, and follow that instinct and follow yourself out of 90 Greyston Avenue. If you wonder what's at 90 Greyston Avenue, that's the head office of IBM, my last corporate job. So I had to lead myself out of 90 Greyston Avenue and find myself without a job and out in the streets, but with an idea. So that's the idea that I've been pursuing. How is it going? Yeah, that's a story for another day. I think so. We've got 2 stories for another day already, if everything goes well today. So that's the first part, Liz. I would say, before I delve into the mechanics of how I've gone about it to where I am so far.
Thanks, Shep. I've never seen a guest like you that already booked 2 sessions up front for themselves, right? But I actually want us to talk about the actual leaving of the job, literally because you left as a senior person with all the perks. And I think it is important to note that it's not like you were not taken care of in that or in that corporate at the time.
Yeah.
What is that thing that pushed you to say, with all those perks that there is in corporate, where you didn't have to carry the risk on your own or the sleepless nights? Somebody else had to worry about you getting your salary, right? And all and the lifestyle that you probably built at the day or at the time, and saying, I'm going to start from a zero income to build what I think I am passionate about. Take us through that thought process.
Yeah.
And what it
So
takes.
so I think it's really almost like both a personal and existential kind of question, to say, how will I talk to myself when if I live to a ripe old age of 95 or 100, and I'm asking myself the things that I could have done, should have done. The question is, yeah, maybe I could have stuck it out and gone and become the country manager of IBM, perhaps. I don't know how that would have worked out, and even go global, because there were opportunities to do that. But all of those things relied on many people making decisions that I had no control over. The question, the longer I thought about it and the more I thought about it, was that, look, if I went on my own, yes, there is this sort of like uncertainty, let's say 0 to 100 meters of uncertainty. But side of it is 100 meters to 100 kilometers above. But sometimes we're worrying about the stuff that we already have, which is my salary, the comfortable life that you referred to, and so forth. But if you really ask yourself to say, for all that you've got, what can you risk it for? And what would you betting, if you were to take everything you have and you use it as a bet, what would you bet it for? What kind of win do you expect to win out of it, as it were? And if all went well, or half as good in any case, what would that win look like? But it's not even about, at the end of the day, like money or possessions or anything. It's really about how you feel each day you wake up, and whether you be fulfilled or not. That's the quantum of what you're betting, really, to say, I've got this job, I'm relatively happy, but would I be more impactful to myself, to my community, to the world, if I did the things differently? So if you make it about money, I suspect you will fail. I think you will go back and say, let me get back to that good salary. And if the next person offers you a good job, or even half as good as the one that you had, you'll probably take it. So if you're still thinking in terms of money, I would say wait until you're not thinking in terms of money. That will be the advice I give anyone who's thinking of embarking on this, because yeah, money should not be, or stuff, or driving a nice car, or anything should not be your motivation. It should be beyond that. It should be the inner satisfaction, or just the idea that you be more impactful, and should you be successful in your mission, as they say in Mission Impossible, yes, you get the glory, but if you're not successful, you you'll be disavowed is the words they use. So you kind of know that, look, all that I'm doing, even perhaps to the people very close to you, it will only make sense to them when you're successful. If you're not, yeah, yeah, I can imagine. I don't even want to imagine it. Yeah.
I want to jump on actually on what you're saying now about every day, how do you feel when you wake up, about your actual work as some sort of a scale of, am I still in this, and am I still in it fully? But I want us to responsibly give advice, right? Well, I guess. um, the advice, like, what are some of the factors that you think people should consider, especially people that are transition? I think, well, it might not be the easiest to say if I have no option and just to start a business, I have nothing else to give up. Maybe I'm employed straight from school, I'm starting a business. That is kind of maybe not very easy, but it's easier than when you're like, I am in the role, I am in the job, I'm already living, and my lifestyle is sort of tailored for the job that I'm having now, or at least, I'm structured around the job that I'm having. What are some of the factors that you think people should consider when they make this big jump or big transition from maybe being employed into starting a business from scratch? Because I think there's also another layer, right, where you parallel run the business and you know that the business is now almost at profitability, or I can live from this business. But also there's living, as in I'm living because I'm going to start something from scratch that's not having any turnover at the moment, and I'm taking the jump. So what are some of the factors that you think we should
Yeah, I
consider?
think the first responsible thing to do is, do you have, when you evaluate yourself, like really honestly, and sometimes we know we tell other people a story about ourselves, but when you sit down on your own, alone by yourself, sorry to repeat, it's for emphasis. You've got to get to a point where you're able to tell yourself certain truths. You know what you're good at, you know what you're bad at, you know the skills, the value of your skills in the market, you know the value, or your ability, whatever it is, how you can either monetize that ability or not. So if you've got a side hustle, if it started off as a hobby, do you regard yourself, and when you measure yourself against the people around you who are doing the same thing, are you as good as the professionals that are doing that kind of thing, and so forth and so forth? So you've got to have a very honest conversation with yourself about how you will fare in the marketplace, because whether it's a sales marketplace, whether it's a skills marketplace, whether it's will you compete with the best in your space? So if you can compete with your best in your space, the question is, when I left my last job, was I able to go and compete to become a consultant or an advisor, or was someone willing to, take me on in my own capacity? And I had kind of convinced myself that I was there, but there were some learnings that I only discovered when I was already out to yeah. So you misevaluate yourself as well. For example, I thought I had a very good network of contacts and so forth, but these contacts, I had them because I was working for this 3-letter international company. When now I'm sending on my own, I did get to meet some of them, but they look at me and say, it was easier when we worked for that big company. Now it's you. How are we going to justify that we gave this piece of work to you? and you don't have a track record. We know you've got, but your company doesn't, and those kind of things. So I realized that, for example, all the contacts that I thought I had, they were still good friends of mine and so forth, but they wanted to keep their jobs. I was crazy enough to let go of mine, and they were not going to lose their jobs on account of me needing work from them. So I'd almost like go back to the drawing board and say, what exactly, or who is my customer? And what is my product? The product that I thought was my product when I walked out of that place, and the product that I had to engineer over time, had to change to fit the available customer that I could find. And eventually the pattern of what, and I'll make a note of the word pattern, because I want to talk about that at some point.
Thank you for sharing those bit of factors, and I want to allow you to go into the pattern one soon, but I almost sense it's not as easy as it looks, right? That I'm going to start a business and you jump into it and it works, and the credibility as well that comes from I was employed or backed up by this company, and now on my own, I have the track record, but the company, which is Liz's baking company, doesn't really have the track record or the credibility yet. It's at building space, and people might not really believe into that. That for me sounds like there was a bit of resilience in the journey that was needed.
Yeah,
But
no, absolutely. There's a time, there's a time when you think, well, I think I figured this whole thing wrong. And the question now is, what do you do when you realize that your entire plan is based on wrong assumptions? Then you have to go back to the drawing board.
Apart from wrong assumptions, I think we're a COVID generations, and we can't generation, and we can't talk about some of the external factors and not mention the impact of COVID, not only on businesses, but also on the way we think about businesses itself. On Bantima, what did COVID do, and what were some of the learnings that came from this external factor, but that no one prepared us for?
Yeah, so good and bad. And I think sometimes that's how you've got to see the world when you're an entrepreneur, is all the time you're looking for the good and bad out of situation, and you want to maximize the what you get out of the good, and you want to minimize what comes out of the bad. So the good is, now we're all locked in, and for starters, there's no spending, there's no traveling, there's no this, there's no that, and there's no that. So my costs went very, very low for someone who's not earning any money. So you can imagine now, at least I'm in a situation where I only have to worry about very few things, and the budget sort of like, so that helped. So you've got to appreciate the good out of the situation. The other good that came out of it is, well, part of it is no traveling, I mentioned, but also it meant that if I was, let's say, doing some advisory consulting work in an environment or whatever, they didn't expect me to arrive there in person. So the work from home situation was very good. In the later times, the bad was, initially there was like really no work, and you phone people and so forth. But after making a bit of traction, the other good that then emerged out of the work from home situation meant that I could work on 2 projects simultaneously, and I didn't need to be at the customer premises, and the other customer didn't need to know that I was working on another project, and so forth and so forth. So at a certain point, I actually didn't want lockdowns to end because I could work on 2, 3, 4 customers. And whilst everyone was saying lockdown must move from level this to level, I was like, can't we go back to harder levels so that we stay longer in this? I would almost want to phone Ramaphosa to say, when he says fellow South Africans, I'm saying stay away from taking us out of lockdown. Now you know the truth. There are some of us who were praying in the opposite direction of everybody because it benefited in some way. The bad is it slowed down things, and I've mentioned the good out of that slowing down. So the company and my development of the company kind of also slowed down quite a lot but it was about survival. So that was what was important at the time. So 2 years almost gets kind of eaten up by COVID. And another good that comes out of COVID is that when we are then unleashed out of COVID, there was a lot of demand for skills, and then there was this whole the great resignation, where people were reevaluating their life choices and so forth, resigning, some were emigrating, semigrating, and all that. That created a lot of flux and demand for skills. And it comes back to the earlier point that I made to say, you as an individual, have you prepared yourself? Are you qualified? Are you specialized? Are you capable? Are you reputable? And do people, if you stand up and speak, do they actually listen and hear that this is a person who's speaking was knowledgeable about this subject? And yes, he's no longer got the big cover of those organizations over his head, but yeah, we find a corner of how to get him through we know he'll do great work. So for a while, I mean, the company was really me consulting and so forth. And then I think it will come to a point where you start bringing people on board, and then you also start having like stomach aches.
I want to go into those stomach aches, but
and more sleepless nights with stomach aches.
I want to go into that, but there was an idea around patterns that you wanted to share, because
yes. So the pattern, yeah. So the patterns which I wanted to is more around things like discipline, routine. So how you then understand that your strategy is working or not. You can't, you will not understand it if you do not have pattern behavior about certain things. So if you repeat the same thing and it's not giving you the results that you expected it would, because success is really a function of frequency. I think if you look in some of the sayings of Einstein, there's something close to that to succeed, you must do things in a certain frequency and repeat. If it's not yielding the result, then you, at least if you want to measure your weight every day at 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. or before you shower, you'll know you're losing weight if you can see that yesterday I was 100 grams less than today, or more than today, and so forth, at the same time of the day. So business is also kind of like that. You've got to choose a strategy and stick to it for a period, and do things in a predictable way, so that if the pattern tells you that, okay, things are now changing after a period, then you know you're either not succeeding or succeeding. Then you or you know what to change, kind of. So you can't be haphazard. So that's also the other benefit of COVID, by the way, because it allowed us to almost like settle into these routines that that you could tell whether you were successful or succeeding or not. So that's the pattern. It talks to discipline, it's talked to sticking to a course, it's talked to collecting data points where you're saying, let me observe very carefully what happens if I wake up every day and I'm sitting at my chair at 8 o'clock. Whether I've got something to do or not to do, whether I've got a customer or don't have a customer, if I sit at my chair at 8 o'clock and make phone calls, if I go to my LinkedIn profile and say hi to everyone that I have ever worked with, just hi, don't bother them with what is it that you're now doing and so forth and so forth. And see who will respond back. You engage in a just, small talk, and then eventually they warm up to, okay, so what's happening to you? And then you tell them this, and eventually you'll start seeing, yeah, there's some people who hold on to the line of discussion and others will drop off, and then and so forth and so forth. So eventually those patterns will emerge where you now know, look, if I see this conversation is going in this direction, it's going somewhere. If it's going like this, I've seen this pattern before, it's going nowhere. And you don't pursue it, you leave it like that. And like I said, not everyone is crazy to leave their job. So don't expect people to die for your cause. So
I'm glad you called it in that French, right? Which I'm not going to repeat. So we have people here that are starting off businesses, contemplating on starting businesses, wanting to be crazy enough to leave employment to start businesses, or just coming out of universities or any institution and wanting to start businesses, right? And I want us to, in a 101 vision of it, to say we have seen businesses, some thrive and some struggle. What is that secret? What is that secret to make a business succeed? Actually, that at a basic level, say, if I'm starting a business, this is the things I'll put in the bucket. You did say you have learned in the journey, so I do think you would have skinned off some of the mistakes that you made earlier, and you're able to just give maybe your top three. Three is a good number. Of, if I'm to start a business, where do I start? Like, where do I start? Where do I go?
yeah, I think if I'm to start a business in any space, is, do I know enough about it to be an industry leader? And have I schooled myself enough about this stuff? Because you're not going to wing it. You may find customers that are more knowledgeable than you, and even if I know we're using a reference point of like tech and cybersecurity and so forth, but I think this applies to any sector where you may find you say, I want to start a business that is in the solar installations business, and then you come to a house which has an electrical engineer or someone who's got some knowledge of power and so forth, and you have no idea yourself, except that you've got this idea that there's many roofs with no solar panels on top, but that's not good enough. So how knowledgeable are you? I would say that is one fundamental thing about any business that you go into. You've got to be able to have some knowledge about it, and the knowledge should also drive some form of passion somewhere. Sometimes they say passion is not enough, but on its own, yes, it's not enough if you're not knowledgeable. Yeah. So that's fundamental. You've got to know what you're talking about and what you're doing. It's also dangerous, because if you want to install electrical things, you could get electrocuted. And so it doesn't matter whether the whole country needs solar panels if you are dead. So that's one. The other thing is I think it really comes to that honest conversation with yourself. Am I ready? Am I capable in this and that and that? And you also have to have an honest assessment of your context, your environment. What is my support structure like? And how am I going to practically, physically survive? Because you always have to have like a plan of how you're going to, carry on and have income, and you've got to keep the one of the terms I learned during this whole entrepreneurship journey is there's a term called keeping the cat off the stove. It's an Afrikaans concept, but yeah, it's got to do with if the stove hasn't been on for days, the cat will start playing on the stove because it no longer burns anything. It's like a plaything now. So you've got to, still get the stove to work so that the cat doesn't joela going on the stove. So that's the whole concept of. So there's many honest conversations that you've got to have with yourself, and you can bullshit everybody else. Sorry to use a strong word, but you can't lie to yourself. Unfortunately, anyone else you can lie to, but to yourself you can't. Into the market of whatever product that you want to. So it calls for you to be to a degree very honest with yourself and the market that you are working in. So I think those are the crucial elements that I can give. If you by saying so, they are not the only ingredients of success. I mentioned sleepless nights, I mentioned stomach aches, I mentioned uncertainty. Even to this day, I still don't know where we will end up. But one thing for sure is wherever we end up, we'll have had a fantastic ride we've given it our best. So you've got to be prepared to give it your best as well. So you can't have regrets that you could have done better and so forth and so forth. So success really at the end of the day is it remains a probability, but it's what you've done in between, whether fail or win or lose, succeed or I see a question about securing funding. Can that be the third topic? Because
you're now holding the whole session. Means now the TRG sessions are going to just be entrepreneur master classes then month on month, if now we are on that.
Yeah, because the issue of securing funding is a whole big kettle of fish on its own. But yeah, yeah, we're bootstrapping. I think maybe that's fair. We haven't got to the thoughts do come around about funding and things like that. But I think we're still very much in our bootstrap phase and startup phase. So yeah, we haven't yet secured funding. Maybe that's a simple answer without going into a lot of detail.
And I think that's a good question, Telly, and I think also a good answer to it, that sometimes we think, and when we start seeing businesses and businesses flourish, we have this mentality that maybe they are funded, there's an investor, or there's help that people got. And I think it's also very important that we do mention that there is businesses that are not yet funded or not even getting funding, but selling the services that they are selling or attracting customers and selling. And I think at the bottom line and the aim of this conversation is to look within ourselves and say, what is in our control and what can we do? You know, if we want to start a business, can I rely on me to get it out there so that when I don't get the funding, I don't start with saying, then this business model is not working or whatever. That if you get a chance to be funded, it finds you going, it finds the startup going, it finds us defining what profitability means, it finds us having defined what our targets are and those kind of things, so that it then strips away the dependencies from something that you don't really have control over. So I want to come to, yes, you started the business, you were in consulting, you were alone, and you did what you could, and it got to a point where the business grew and you now started needing people. Now, over and above just worrying about the company, you're worrying about the livelihoods of your own employees. But I want, and I know there's a lot of leaders here as well, around the choice of employees is the biggest risk that we normally take, right, in business, on, you know, hiring the right people, that you can instill the right, not even instill the right culture, but just make sure that their own personal values is aligned to yours and their own aspiration is aligned to the company, that you then can say, we then, you know, push. And I think Telly's in the same thing, says, how do you
Good
how do
question.
you
I've
secure
got a
the
very simple answer to that. An example that you all relate to. Well, I hope we will all relate to. I don't know how many people are religious on this platform, but I'll give an analogy of when Jesus started his mission. He went to guys who were fishing by the river, and they were probably not even good fishermen because they hadn't caught anything. And he said to them, cast your net on this other side of the boat, and they did. And then they caught fish. And then he said to them, follow me and I'll make you fishers of men. And they didn't know what that means. They'd never preached in their life, and so forth and so forth. So as an entrepreneur, why is that story relevant? These guys didn't know the gospel of Jesus Christ. They didn't know who it was. They didn't know the good news of salvation and all that stuff. But anyway, they followed this guy, and we read about them today, that there was Peter, and they even had different names before it. So the moral of that story is you've got to be able to take people who, because you can't afford the people with the right abilities and the right, and they won't leave their jobs for a company that doesn't even have the funding that you were talking about earlier. So you kind of get this motley bunch, and you've got to then be able to impart with them the skills and capabilities, and basically, like that story which I started off with, where even when you are not there, these guys can carry the gospel, and 2000 years later we're still talking about, you know, a guy who only really spent 3 years with his team, as it were. So you've got to think of things in that context and be able to say, okay, this individual has got the right heart, he's got the right mind. If I spend my time with them, I can impart the things that they need to know. And if I lead as a general in an army or war should lead, because you also in that context don't really get experienced soldiers, but you must fight a war. So you've got to think in those terms to say, what do I tell these people and what do I teach them so that they can become useful? And I think we're coming to a year since I started recruiting the team that I've got now, but I can wake up and go to a meeting and do things that were completely not on my calendar. I don't even need to worry to say the guys at the office who don't know what to do. And when they come back, when I come back into the office, and sometimes I come back into the office literally at 5 p.m. Just to see their faces before they go home. And in fact, now I can't keep up with the work that they produce. And it's really humbling, I think personally, for me to have the team that I have. But I can tell you for free that they didn't come from cybersecurity backgrounds when I got them. They were fishing and barely good at what they were doing at that time. But it's a leader's job to if I think I mentioned the whole leadership program that I went on when I was still a thing. I think one of the definitions that they gave us in that conference was that you've got to be someone who takes people of different abilities or capabilities, navigate them through obstacles to achieve a certain mission. And if you are that kind of person who can take whatever you get, all right, develop it and make something out of it and achieve the mission and objective, then that's the simplest definition of leadership. So that's what we've done. The guys, now I work for them. I am. Sometimes I wonder who's the boss. They tell me, hey, we need this, we need that. I'm the one who's now gasping for oxygen to keep up.
Yeah, I've met some of your employees and I can attest to that. I think there's a question from Litabo. Starting your business, did you require more of a financial capital or a social capital? I think you did speak a bit around the networking, but maybe we can dive a little bit deeper. While you're thinking about that, Reginald is also saying, I have learned that one needs to keep their head above the water for at least 3 years before they experience notable growth. So does the review period come after the period, or one has to continuously review strategies while the head is in the same position and risk choking in the process? Any which you're ready, you can take both at once.
Yeah, I can start off with I think if you need money to start a business, then you shouldn't start. Yeah, because I could answer that also with a quick story of when I was starting the business. I went to see a lady who was an executive of one of the companies that I work for. She had started a business. So I was like, how did you go about it? And so forth and so forth. And then she says, when I started the business, I had a lot of money. Remember, I was an executive and what. So they gave me a lot of money. She says, my business didn't start until I finished that money. So I didn't understand. And he says, no, because I still had all this money that the golden handshake or parachute, whatever it is. Says I just kept just drifting and I didn't care about a lot of things. So if you don't have the money to see that your 100 rand is not gonna last you the rest of the week, that's actually going to, get you to really question certain things. So she said her business only started at a time when the money that she got as golden handshake ran out. Fortunately for me, or unfortunately, unlike her, as much as I was coming from a fairly good job, I was not at that level when I left. I left with several millions in my bank account. by the third month, I think I had finished all the money that they so yeah. So capital, what you need and what is more valuable is the social capital. The social capital coming from, because that's really your bank account, that social capital, and you get it from those elements that I spoke about, your qualifications, your and your self-awareness as well, that you're aware of your limitations and so forth, the integrity that people know you to possess, and those kind of things. Those are really important. And yeah, network. I mentioned this, it can be an overrated thing, but it's an important thing. Those guys I mentioned that were sitting in very high positions, and I used to see them in my old context. Some of them are still there. I'm hoping that when we've created a bit of our own social capital as an organization, I can still call on them and go back and say, hey, we're a little bit bigger now. Can you talk to us now? You know, so I'm waiting for that day when I can go back to those other guys, and they're not bad guys, like I mentioned. They just don't want to risk their jobs backing a 2-day startup. So have social capital more than if I were to ask for, I would not ask for 10 million. I would ask for more social capital if it could be given to answer that whole question of funding again. That takes you further than, yeah.
Should I repeat the question on strategy? I hope Letabo you answer.
Okay, no, on strategy, I no need to repeat. I think you've got to approach it in sprints, right? If what you're doing isn't, there's certain things that you've got to know to say. Remember, if you're operating in a space that you know very well, that's why your knowledge, your market, your industry and market knowledge, your knowledge, subject matter knowledge, and so forth. It's also like farming. If you're farming in an area where you don't know what, if a wind is blowing in the morning, whether it will rain in the afternoon or not, then you're not well knowledgeable about that space. So if you know the market, you can continuously evaluate those patterns that I was talking about, to say, if you stick to a certain routine or sequence of things, and you observe what's going on, then you know quickly enough if, yeah, there's certain things that you say, look, I'll have real information after 3 months. Then there's certain things you say, I'll know exactly after 2 weeks. If someone is ghosting you after 3 days, you know they are ghosting you, right? So the same thing, if someone is blue ticking you, is the terminology we use these days, you know you're being blue ticked, and you've got to, so it's continuous. It's literally every day you've got to be rethinking, asking yourself, have I made the wrong assumptions? Have I made the right assumption? And also having conversations with other people. You've got to know what to share, what not to share, and so. But you need to be looking for insights, because a simple revelation can actually reveal to you where your strategy is wrong, and you only need to move 2 steps to the right to get your strategy right. So sometimes you're not really far off the mark, but things are not working. So kind of you're close to the door, but you're not even knocking the right door, so it's a continuous evaluation and review. You've got to develop that method of continuously questioning yourself and say, how can this strategy improve you? You've got to take it through the laundry system several times and always continuously re-laundering your strategy.
Sure. I cannot believe by this time we are doing our goodbyes, but it feels like there's so much that we still need to go through. There is so many questions that are still flocking in. Okay, let's take the 2, the 3. Hey, guys. I feel like we should have just called it Entrepreneurship Masterclass and have those episodes coming. I do believe now we need episodes. Telly is asking, do you believe in a business plan? If you have one, is it working or has it worked for you? Cheza is asking, what would be your advice to someone who is indecisive between corporate and entrepreneurship live? Is finding a delicate balance of both something that can work? And then Sfiso is asking, how long a session like this, after how long a session like this may come back? Okay, that I'll answer with everybody that's complaining about the goodbyes, but can we tackle? I think Cheza's one you did answer really when we were starting, but maybe quickly you can kill it about a person being indecisive between corporate and entrepreneurship live and finding a delicate balance. Both, can that be something between both? Can that be something that works? And then there is a question about the business plan. Do you have one? Is it working? And or has it worked for you?
I think a business plan is a necessary thing. It's a necessary thing to crystallize your thinking and go through a structured way of thinking about what you want to do. But that's as far as it is useful. In reality, so it's one of those things, you need it, but once you have it, you crumple up the paper and you throw it away. And if you came and you spoke to someone, they'll say, do you have a business plan? And indeed, you must have it. But there is, it's also something that is not static, that you say, look, I wrote this. So for me, Bantima's business plan is encapsulated in the following. We want to start a Pan-African business, cybersecurity business, that delivers cutting-edge cybersecurity solutions and services across Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So we're not saying we are only operating in Africa, but we are from Africa, basically. So we that's our plan, to become a Afro-global business. That's what our plan is. So everything that we do every day is informed by two things. Are we going to survive to get to that mission and vision? So how do we survive? What money? How do we make money to live long enough to see that vision? So that's the simple. If you wanted to reduce it to, yes, of course, there are things that we will do and not do, and so forth and so forth, that we think we want to be known for and not known for, and other things. All of it is in between the, call it the survival element, as in we must find revenue to fund ourselves to meet that ideal objective. So without a business plan, I don't think you've got the core thing that you refine your it's almost like if you're running around a football field or whatever, you need to have that field where you run around and you make your laps around. So that's really the business plan. That, and then out of it you throw things in, you throw things out, you throw things in, you throw things out, and you continue to refine your stuff every day. That's as far as the business plan question goes. If you are indecisive, stay where you are decided. So either decide to stay or decide to go. The only other, call it recommendation, because it depends really with the business, because some people have these, call it side hustles that they do, and they've got this ability to for me, I couldn't do that because cybersecurity is what I was doing at work. I couldn't do it at home or over the weekends. So it was either I'm doing it at work or I quit and then I do it this side. It wasn't a scenario where I took on an activity that did not conflict or threaten my time and mind and whatever which I could do on weekends and other things. And if I had done that, that would have probably also damaged my reputation, and that social capital that we spoke about would have also been in jeopardy if I was sort of like moonlighting and doing all sorts of other things. So I unfortunately, in my case, it was either this or that, and that was it. Other people, they always recommend that okay, find a side hustle, and then when it's grown to this size, and then you can safely quit your job, and then you do this, and so forth and so forth. So in certain instances, it may work if you are in a situation where perhaps you're transitioning completely out of what you do in your normal sort of like day-to-day job. Say maybe you've got skills of being a motor mechanic and you're fixing cars after hours at home, weekends, and so forth. And now you've got this whole street full of cars that you think if you quit your job, you can just go and fix those cars and get paid and live your life as in a new lease as a motor mechanic. So in those models, it could work, but in the context which I found myself, I had to make a clean break from one to the other.
Shep, I'm gonna cut you now. We are over time. Normally after an hour, we are done with the sessions. I love the fact that there is a clear well, should I call it integration, that some of those things, even in corporate, we could borrow from you today. We could take from this conversation and say, okay, now when I lead people, I'm not going to put myself under pressure to find oiled machines. It's my responsibility as a leader to train and make out of people what I probably think should be coming out, right? And then have a freedom of saying, you know what, I can now look at other things to do, like attend meetings without worrying on checking where people are and if they are doing the job and all that, which I find it very liberating that this conversation was not only for people in business or thinking about business, but in our current day-to-day, we can actually start with that. I think you really emphasized around self-evaluation, and I think I'm taking it not only from a business perspective, but to check, how do I feel in the morning about the job that I'm doing today? And how do I feel about life in general? Like when I wake up in the morning, where is my passion? And knowing as well that passion itself, it's not the only currency. Can I bundle it with consistency? I mean, can I bundle it with discipline? Can I create a pattern that says, yeah, this is just the job I want to keep. Can I start at a certain time? Is there a particular structure that I can put that keep me disciplined, that keep me honest in the way that I run things? I love the fact that you reminded us that running this business is also not as easy. You know, there is resilience that is needed. There is worrying, there's sleepless nights, and also the responsibility of that we are having not only for ourselves and for other people. Factors that you talked about, also about knowledge, I think that also brings responsibility back to us to say, if we are going to venture in any sector or any industry, do we know enough? And if we know enough, are we able to compete to be the best in that? Why would people come and buy from us, whatever the service or the product that we are selling? And I think that as well, also say we don't go into businesses because we think people are making money and we are just going to add to numbers. We go into them and going to build sustainable businesses. I agree with everyone. I think you need to come back to the platform and we start dissecting some of the things that you were running over. And I think more than anything for us in this year, it's not just about coming and having hyped up people to talk about. It's also to say we have seen these businesses, and I think people can check you out. Bandima Cybersecurity. I know there's business leaders here that might want to protect themselves and want cyber security services, but more than that, to also learn that something can be built from scratch and what does it look like in the current, and show us what is possible. But I think it'll be also very nice to come back and, you know, go a level down and say, but what does it look like if it's the leadership aspect, if it's the funding aspect, if it's the financial statement aspect, whatever it is, that we don't then assume that, oh, if it's a business plan, even if we know we're going to check it at some point, but what does it look like? You know, how do we make it? You talked about honesty to self, and I think I'm rushing into trying to summarize what we talked about because it has been so loaded tonight that we can't really squeeze it, or we couldn't even really squeeze it in the 45 minutes that we normally have these conversations. But I want to thank everybody for staying with us tonight. I do believe that we will really, really come back to this conversation again, and also just work with some of the businesses around. And there's a few people I'll obviously link you with if you have capacity to sort of look at some of the businesses we have in the Rising Girl Child community as a case study, or somewhere where we can say, did you look at this? Or how can we help you? Because the main thing is not just to talk, is also to have a positive influence to the people that we commune with, not just come and talk about, yeah, we did it like this. So I will definitely squeeze some of the people in your calendar. Now that you've built capacity with your people and they can run you, I think then it can stretch into also giving some of the people such training. Because we have went over time, we're also not gonna sit for questions that people would normally have. But if there's any questions, I did share my number, and you can follow us on Instagram. You can follow my personal handle is Liz Morale, Liz_Morale, or you can follow the Rising Girl Child. I think it has a 1 at the end with the underscores between there, and Rising and Girl Child. It should be easy for you to find me, and let's start and let's keep this conversation going. Do you want to say goodbye to our Rising Girl Child family? And when you're done, I'm literally switching everyone off. So thank you, family. I will not call everybody by name, but
thank you for your attention. Yes, thank you for your attention, and your questions were awesome. I'm looking forward to the invitation to come and talk about the additional things that we spoke about. So next time.
Thank you, everyone, and good night. It's literally good night. So let's continue chatting on the social media platforms. Thanks, Seb. I will send the recording. Guys, I'll definitely share this recording, and I hope you're following the recordings that we have been sharing. Good night.
Okay, bye.
Bye.